Hi class, it's Mrs. Kane. I'm here with your next e-learning lesson. Today is going to be a review day, so I'm going to be reviewing what I've been teaching with my videos the last couple weeks, and we will be preparing for your quiz, which I will be posting on Wednesday. So our topic is operations with rationals, and we're going to start by talking about simplifying rational expressions. So when you're asked to simplify expressions, you're really trying to reduce the fraction. Okay, and so when you have a rational expression, you have to factor the numerator, factor the denominator, and then cancel out any common factors. Okay, so in this first set of problems, the first problem, if we want to factor, if we want to simplify, to factor the numerator, we're going to take out a GCF of 6, and we're left with x minus 6. And then for the denominator, we're going to take out a 2, and we're left with x minus 6. And so when we simplify, after we factor, we usually have at least one or two common factors. So in this case, we can cross out the x minus 6, and then we have 6 divided by 2, and so the answer is 3. Okay? In the second example, we can factor the top and the bottom again. The numerator, we're going to factor by using, I'm going to use a diamond. So I need two numbers that multiply to give me positive 4 and add to give me negative 5. And so I'm going to use negative 1 and negative 4. And so I'm going to write the numerator in factored form. X minus 1 times x minus 4. And then the bottom, I want you to recognize difference of squares. X squared minus 16. If you take the square root of each of those terms, we get x plus 4 times x minus 4. Okay, and now that we have both of those in factored form, we can cross out the common factor, in this case x minus 4. And so we're left with x minus 1 on the top and x plus 4 on the bottom. Okay, and that's how we simplify rationals. The next thing I'm going to talk about is multiplying rational expressions. So, pretty similar to simplifying. The difference is you have two fractions. Everything stays in the same order. You're going to factor any denominators that you can. Any numerators you can. You're going to factor any denominators you can. Then you're going to cross out common factors. Okay, so if we look at this first problem, r squared plus 5r, we can take out a GCF of r, and we're left with r plus 5. Okay, that first denominator, 2r, we can't do anything with that, so we're going to just leave it. 6r minus 12, we can take out a GCF of 6, and we're left with r minus 2. And then for the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and make a diamond. I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 10 and add to give me 3. So I'm going to use 5 and negative 2. And so my denominator is x plus 5 times x minus 2. Okay, and so now, just like with simplifying, we get to cross out common factors, and we're allowed to cross things out that are on the top of the first and the bottom of the second. So notice we have an r plus 5 on the top and an r plus 5 on the bottom. We have an r minus 2 on the top and an r minus 2 on the bottom. Sorry, that should be an r, not an x. So we can cross out those r minus 2's. Now, on the top we have a single r, and on the bottom we have a single r. So because those are part of multiplication, we can also cross those out. And so notice we're left with just a 6 on top and a 2 on bottom. And 6 divided by 2 is 3, and so the answer is 3. Okay, so for the next one, again, we're multiplying, and so we're just going to factor everything we can. Okay, so we can't factor the x plus 2, so I'm going to leave that x plus 2. But then 4x plus 8, I can take out a 4, and I'm left with x plus 2. And then for 8x minus 40, I can take out an 8, and I'm left with x minus 5. And then we have another difference of squares. We take the square root of x squared and the square root of 25. We can break that up into x plus 5 times x minus 5. Okay, and now if I look for common factors, I have an x plus 2 on the top and an x plus 2 on the bottom. I have an x minus 5 on the top and an x minus 5 on the bottom. So, and then lastly, I have an 8 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. So I'm going to cross those out, and I'm going to put a 2 on top. And so I'm left with a 2 on top, and then on the bottom I'm left with x plus 5. And so my answer is 2 over x plus 5. Okay, so that's how we multiply. Now, if you know how to multiply, the good news is you should also be able to divide. So remember, when we divide, we change the problem to multiplication in the very first step. So I want you to remember the expression keep, change, flip. Okay, so when we divide, we keep the first fraction the same. We change the division sign to a multiplication sign, and then we flip the second fraction. And so this first problem, right after the first step, it turns into a multiplication problem. So notice I kept the first fraction the same, I changed the division to multiplication, and I flipped the second fraction. And now I'm going to go ahead and factor. Okay, so I can't do anything with the 12, but I can take a 4 out of the bottom and get x minus 2. And then I need a diamond. I need two numbers that multiply to -6 and add to +1. So we can use 3 and -2. So I'm going to write x plus 3 times x minus 2. Then these ones are a little tricky. X squared plus 3x. That's a GCF problem. Take an x out and you get x plus 3. Okay, so now is the fun part. We get to start canceling. So we have an x plus 3 on the bottom and an x plus 3 on the top. We have an x minus 2 on the top and an x minus 2 on the bottom. And then again, 12 divided by 4 is 3, so I can cross that out and put a 3 on top. And so I'm left with a 3 on top and an x on the bottom. And so the answer is 3 over x. Okay, so again, the first step, in the next one, I'm actually going to factor while I keep, change, flip. So remember to keep the first one the same. We're going to change this division to multiplication, and then I'm going to write myself a note to remember to flip the second one. Okay, but to save a couple steps, instead of rewriting the whole problem, we'll just kind of factor as we go. So x squared minus 25, we just looked at that one. That's going to factor into x plus 5 times x minus 5. Okay, and then I'm going to make a quick little diamond here. I need two numbers that multiply to -15 and add to -2. So I'm going to use -5 and 3. And so this bottom here becomes x minus 5 times x plus 3. I'm going to put times. And then this 5x minus 5 is going to go on the top. I'm going to take a GCF of 5 out, and I'm left with x minus 1. And then on the bottom there, I need two numbers that multiply to -5 and add to +4. So I'm going to use 5 and -1. And so this is going to be x plus 5x minus 1. Okay, so notice that I flipped it. I kind of factored and flipped in one big step. Okay, so now I can cross out. I have an x minus 5 here and here. I have an x plus 5 on top, an x plus 5 on bottom, and I have an x minus 1 and an x minus 1. So after all that, I get just 5 over x plus 3. Okay, so the biggest difference between multiplying and dividing is when you divide, you keep, change, flip. You turn it into multiplication right at the get-go. All right, the last topic, adding and subtracting. The important thing is that you need a common denominator. So we'll take a look at a couple that have a common denominator, and then we'll talk about a couple that do not. So if you have a common denominator, like part A and B here, all you have to do, you're going to keep the denominator the same, and then you're going to combine the numerators using either addition or subtraction. So you're really just collecting like terms. So for this first one, we have 3x plus x is 4x. And then -5 plus 13 is going to be +8. And so the answer is just 4x plus 8 over x plus 3. Okay, when you subtract, you just have to be careful. You have to make sure that you subtract both terms in the second numerator. Okay, so for this one, we have a common denominator of 4x plus 5. We're going to do 3x minus 5x is -2x. And then you're going to do -4 minus 3. So -4 minus 3 is -7. So -2x minus 7 over 4x plus 5. Now, when you do not have a common denominator, you have to find one, okay? So in this next example, look at your denominators. You have an x plus 5. We've got x squared plus 6x plus 5. If one of your denominators is factorable, you need to factor it in step 1. So I'm going to factor this into x plus 5, x plus 1. Okay, and now to find the common denominator, you need to include any factors that are shared. So we need to have an x plus 5. And we need any factors that appear once. And so we need an x plus 1. And so the common denominator is x plus 5 times x plus 1. And so we're going to rewrite both fractions with that denominator. I'm going to put my original numerators back on top. Now notice I did not do anything to my first denominator. Once I factored it, I got x plus 5, x plus 1. So I didn't change the value of the first denominator, so I'm not going to do anything to the 3x minus 2. Okay, but for the second fraction, my original denominator said x plus 5. And what did I do to the x plus 5 here? I multiplied it by x plus 1. And so I'm going to multiply the top by x plus 1. Okay, so now I have a common denominator, x plus 5 times x plus 1, and I need to combine my numerators. Now, before I'm ready to combine, I need to distribute this 5. So I get 5x plus 5, and so now I have 3x plus 5x is 8x, and then I have negative 2 plus 5 is positive 3. Okay, and so your answer is 8x plus 3 over x plus 5 times x plus 1. Okay, so let's try a subtraction one. So to find the LCD here, notice that the x plus 2 and the x minus 5 cannot be factored. So to find the common denominator, we need to include any factors that appear once or that are shared. So we have 1x plus 2 and we have 1x minus 5. And so all we do is multiply those. And so we're going to rewrite each of these fractions with the denominator x plus 2 times x minus 5. I'm going to put my original denominator or numerators back up on top. Now, if we look at our original denominators and our new denominators, we got to figure out what did we do to the original to get the new. Okay, so for the first fraction, we multiplied the bottom by x minus 5, so we need to multiply the 4 by x minus 5. And for the second fraction, we multiplied the bottom by x plus 2, so we need to multiply the top by x plus 2. And so now I'm ready to combine. My denominator is going to be x plus 2 times x minus 5. Before I can actually combine, I need to distribute the top. So I get 4x minus 20. And then over here I get 7x plus 14. And I've got to subtract. So 4x minus 7x is negative 3x. And then negative 20 minus 14 is going to be minus 34. Okay, so these last two are tricky, but if you follow the steps, I know you guys can do it. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. I'd like you to go ahead and do the review assignment, check your answers, and submit it. And like I said, there will be a quiz over this material that I will post on Wednesday. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.